Hello? Yeah, that's better. Okay, Mark. I need your mark.
It's marker.
Marker. All right, let's do it. Here we go.
All right, baby.
This trips me up that I can't hear anything in the headphones, but I'm wearing headphones.
No, you can't tell them that.
I know.
It's just for show.
I know, just for show. Okay. Holy shit, that was my microphone's ultra sensitive, dude. Okay, hey everybody, it's Cameron here from the 4th episode of Framework. I am joined with Painted Bones. Karina, what's up? How are you today?
Wasn't expecting you to throw my Instagram handle out there.
Yeah, just the first thing. Was just a shameless plug.
I like it.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining.
Yeah, no, I didn't think you would complain about that. Okay, I gotta take these off. I can't do this and not hear anything. I'm sorry, I can't do this and not hear anything. So, yeah, it's been a while since we've kind of sat in a room and talked to each other.
Yeah, this feels a bit like an interrogation, I'm not gonna lie. We have lights set up right above us. Yeah. And
Robin scrolling his Instagram on the floor.
That's what makes it not an interrogation, just Robin sitting on the floor
presence.
On Instagram. Robin's presence.
Robin's presence. Right. There was an interrogation in the movie we're going to talk about today. But like it was very, it wasn't the primary function of the movie, but
I guess you could call it that.
What?
I guess you could call it that. Yeah.
An interrogation where he, what's his name was standing
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Anyways, I don't want to get too far into just that one scene, but we do have a couple of frames here that you've chosen.
Yeah.
Before we get into the frames, I just want to remind our audience for the 4th time, and I probably won't do this again for the 5th episode, but because it's going to get a bit boring listening to me talk about Framework and how it's a film-centric podcast brought to you by Red Curtain Entertainment. The man, the myth, the legend, Kevin Reus from Red Curtain Entertainment is not here today, but he is the executive producer of the show. So shout out to Kevin.
Woo.
You can check him out on DrMasaki on YouTube. As of the release date of this recording, we will have had a few episodes already air on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, which is really exciting.
You were holding that glass of water for so long.
Was I? Yeah, it was.
It's just in the air.
It's just in the air, yeah. Yeah. That's it. It's an exciting thing, though. I've always thought about doing a podcast. I started doing podcasts when I was in high school with a friend. When it was just kind of starting, when podcasts were new and mostly YouTube had podcasts. And we did 10-minute episodes on our lunch break because that's about all the time we had.
That's awesome.
And we mostly did reviews of music, like pop music.
Oh.
But how they influence, but it's transitioned to something huge. And I feel so proud to have a show on a platform that literally everybody has access to. So welcome to episode 4.
Thank you.
I'm really pleased to have you on episode 4. We're going to talk about a movie that I just saw that hopefully has affected you and maybe your career. And I mean, we'll just dive deep into that conversation. Before we get deep into the 4 images or one of the images or whatever you want to do, which, by the way, I haven't seen yet. They're hiding behind my audition window. I haven't looked at them yet. So this is me coming with almost no preparation, improvising the entire episode. So we'll be excited to do that. But before we really get into the meat and potatoes of the show, tell me about yourself. Just a little bit about Karina. What do you want the audience to know about you, and what do you think is relevant for the show? And a little tidbit, maybe add something that's a fun fact or something.
I thought you were going to write me an intro. Didn't you write one for Robin? Where's my intro, Cam?
Oh, well, yeah, I read his website description, I think. Like I read his... Yeah, and then he called me out on it being inaccurate.
Oh, but you wrote it.
Yeah. He's not going to say anything because...
Okay. I'm going to do my intro now.
Do your best. Don't worry.
Okay. Well, I'm Karina, but you guys know that already. I'm 24. Also work in the film industry. That's why I'm here.
Welcome to Framework.
Thank you. But I work in the camera department, and I'm officially an IATSE 667 member, not to brag or anything, but it's pretty cool. And I make other art too, I guess. That's my intro.
No, that's cool. That's a great intro. I mean,
I'm glad you liked it. It was me.
Yeah, I mean, Robin, are you a union member yet? So you're the first union member we've had on the show.
That's it's kind of a stretch, but you know what? Yeah.
I think it's great. I think it's awesome. You know, you're on a show that, I mean, I'm assuming, have you signed a...
Yeah, I'm not allowed to talk about it.
Yeah, you got an NDA on that. So we can't talk about that one. But you're on a project right now.
I am.
You're on a project right now. As part of your entrance into the union, they call it, they call it a rotation, right? What does that involve? Like, what are you involved in terms of just the general sense of having a rotation? For anybody who doesn't know what that means, explain kind of what you're doing.
Well, I'm a camera trainee, which that's why I think it's a stretch to say I'm a member, but basically I get put on like 6 to 10 rotations on different like shows and movies, and I basically shadow other assistant camera people, and they are teaching me how to be a camera assistant. So yeah, that will probably take me about maybe a year and a half to complete, and then I can upgrade to a full member.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. And would you say that you've always, felt a calling from the camera department, or you've always approached the camera department as sort of in your head, maybe that's kind of what I want to do? Or was there a change at some point? Have you always been interested in the camera department?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of started out shooting photos, actually. I remember I had like my old iPod Touch in middle school, just like trying to take artsy photos and over editing them, and I'm sure everyone had that phase, but mine stuck around. So yeah, now I'm working in the camera department, still trying to decide if it's like what I want to do forever. But actually, the movie we're talking about today was a pretty monumental one for me. I came out in 2013, so I guess I would have been... What grade would we have been in, Cam? Were we in college yet?
Not college, definitely not college.
No.
grade 11?
Grade 11, yeah.
2011, we graduated... we're the same age. I mean, yeah, we graduated grade 8 in 2011. So grade
2010.
Grade 9 would have been
2010, right?
I was 2011.
Graduated middle school? Is that what you're saying?
Elementary school, yeah.
Oh, I went to middle school. That's not relevant to what we're talking about.
Is middle school just like grade 6, 7, 8?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We started college in 2015.
Okay.
So if we work backwards 4 years is 2011.
You're right. I'm wrong. Don't you just love to hear that?
You're wrong.
Anyway, yeah, so 2013 would have been grade 11.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just, it was like maybe, I don't know, 1 or 2 in the morning. It was like one of those nights in the middle of the summer where, you just like stay up, all the lights are off in your bedroom, but you got your laptop and you're just watching movies. And this was one that I put on, and I don't know, it felt pretty life-changing in a way. I mean, I've got a tattoo from it, so it's on me forever. But it was definitely like pretty monumental in me wanting to pursue film. Originally, like I was like, oh, I'll go to college for photography, and then I was thinking like, well, maybe I'll go into film because my justification was there was more work in film, which I don't know if that's true. But hey, now I'm here, so must have done something.
Must have done something.
Yeah.
Just obviously, to lose the kind of interview formula that we've set up.
Yeah.
To go into the movie that we are going to talk about today, which I believe you said is The Kings of Summer.
That's right.
So in a way, you are a guinea pig for framework in the sense that we're trying out a couple of different things. First thing, as the audience can see if they're on YouTube right now, is we have a video element.
Look into the camera.
So that's kind of neat. And and so we have a video element. We also, there's a few little things about how I'm going to approach the show that's slightly different. In the past, what I've done is I've written a review for the movie. In this case, I wasn't actually able to do that for Kings of Summer. So I'm going to try and do something where we look at the IMDb description of the Kings of Summer and let that jumpstart what frames did we pick, and then talk about it in whichever way that you've thought about today, which I think we had a brief discussion before coming on the podcast about. So IMDb says 3 teenage friends in the ultimate act of independence decide to spend their summer building a house in the woods and living off the land. And that's it. That's the description, the sort of, I guess you could call it a log line in a way. It's less of a log line and more of a one-sentence description. It's close to a log line. The film's director, do you know how to pronounce the last name?
No. I think it's like Vought Roberts.
Jordan Voight Roberts. Vought Roberts.
Vought Roberts.
Whatever. Sorry, Jordan. You're probably not listening to this. Written by Chris Galetta, I guess. Starring Nick Robinson, Gabriel Basso, and Moises Arias, or Arias, or however you...
I think it's Arias.
Arias, yeah. So a great film. I just saw the film. Like Scott Pilgrim, which we talked about in episode 2, I hadn't seen the film. You hadn't seen Scott Pilgrim? I hadn't seen Scott Pilgrim before the episode. Well, I watched it for the episode.
No, I know.
A week prior to the episode. So this is, framework has proven to be such a great exercise for me because there are so many films I haven't seen that I'm getting to watch because I know these people, because I know you and I know Kevin, and it's just amazing to broaden your horizons in watching movies you haven't seen before, and I think more people should do it. It's easy to get into the slump of watching something comfortable, like watching something you've watched 40,000 times. Roger Ebert, the website, gave it a 2 out of 5.
Rude.
Gave it a 2 out of 5. IMDb gives it a 7.1 out of 10. I think that's closer to... You okay over there, Robin? I think 7.1 out of 10 is closer to the rating that I would give it, and even that is a little bit low. But we're not necessarily here to talk about what we would write about the film. But that's the film. So if you're just listening and you don't get to see the frames because you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, we want to give you the best experience possible by describing the movie that we're talking about and the frames that we're looking at. So would you say that little description that we read does the film justice, or should we maybe want to try and expand on it?
I think it's a pretty bare bones description, but it's pretty accurate. I mean, you have these kids that run off to the woods and build a house, and that's usually what I tell people the movie is about. And I think log lines are tough sometimes because you don't really describe sort of the emotional journey that the characters go on. I guess you'd have to read the plot in order to understand, or just watch the movie. But I think bare bones, yeah, it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, definitely. With a log line, there's the intention to try and get across the essence of the movie, but sometimes because you only have one sentence, you can't encapsulate the entire film in one sentence. You have to watch the entire film to get that, for sure. So help us figure out what frames we're looking at. I just opened them up, so I'm seeing 4 frames.
Yep. I think that's cheating, but it's okay.
That's okay.
Cam didn't yell at me, so...
No, I didn't yell at you. Kevin brought 3 for Scott Pilgrim.
So I hold the record now.
So you hold the record. So maybe somebody will come on in the future and bring 6 or whatever,
or just play the whole movie in real time.
You know, we'll do a framework episode. It'll be a bonus episode down the line where we'll pick a movie and we'll just watch it, and then that.
But in pure silence. But no one gets anything out of it.
And you can't play the movie because it's copyright. So.
So it's just a black screen.
So it's just a black screen for an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'll let you describe the frames.
Okay.
So I think you'll do a good job of that. Sure. And you can also pick the frame that you want to start with and just tell us about it. And remember, too, we want to cater to our both audiences. So YouTube's going to see the frames, but Spotify's not. So.
Right. So I picked these 4 frames because I think they're really good examples of showing parallels in this movie, and that's a really prevalent theme in this movie, and they use it as a way to drive the story as well, and they show that through their editing techniques and also their sound, and visually as well. And the frames I picked, the first 2 are actually literally the opening scene of the movie, and the last 2 are one of the last scenes, and you'll often see this as a pretty common technique, I guess, sort of in films, is like a storybook ending. The way it begins is the same way that it ends. And so the stills that I picked, the ones from the beginning of the film, you see Joe, he's our main sort of teen character. He's in the shower and his dad is knocking on the door, telling him he's been in there for 54 minutes and to get out. And you see him just sort of ignoring his dad. In this still, he's like covering his ears in the shower. And the second still is his dad just waiting outside of the door. And I kind of want to talk about color as well. I think it's a pretty relevant symbol in the movie as well. At this point, like these 2 frames, they're kind of washed out, not super saturated. Throughout the movie, you can tell that Joe and his dad don't have the best relationship because, you know, his mom's not around and his dad's dating this new girl. Joe likes to call her Spider-Woman that was found in the gutter. So he's definitely not a big fan of her. But these 2 frames, both very washed out and kind of telling of what their relationship is like at the beginning of this movie. And I'll talk about the plot a little bit for people that haven't seen this movie. Is Joe and his friend Patrick just like one day decide that they're gonna run away from home basically and just go live in the woods and just, you know, be independent and basically say like, you know, we don't need our parents to help us. We can just totally do this ourselves. So his friend Patrick definitely needs a bit more convincing, whereas Joe is just like, yeah, let's do this. Like, it'll be no problem. So they run off together, and I guess before that they go to like a senior party on the pond, and they, you know, find this perfect clearing, and this weird kid Biagio just follows them, and somehow they just get stuck with him, and he ends up helping them build this place. So yeah, I guess that's sort of the general plot. I don't know, like, should I be spoiling the whole thing? I
mean, if you've made it this far and you haven't seen Kings of Summer, you're torturing yourself.
Well, I don't blame people if they haven't seen it. It's I wouldn't say it's like, you know, like it came out in 2013, so it's not really like super relevant right now. But if you really like coming of age movies, watch this one because it's my favorite.
See, it's Kings of Summer. So I think it's a great film. I just saw it. I didn't watch it in 2013. I love a really good coming of age story, and I mean they're everywhere. Like I guess you could say the movie I'm writing right now is kind of coming of age, not in the sense that it's all encompassing coming of age, because it isn't, but you can find the mechanic of coming of age and the themes that come along with it in a lot of films, and this one does it really in a really nice way that I think was refreshing. They took three characters who and highlighted parental relationships, three different parental relationships. Joe's parental relationship is obviously that of one with a father, and obviously his mother appeared to have died. So just having a single parent, and whereas Patrick is, the relationship he has both parents. But the one that's highlighted is one he has with his mom, because his mom is kind of weird. Like, his mom is...
They're both very strange.
They're both really... I love the actors, but, by the way, the actors everywhere throughout this movie are great. And that's a very different relationship from the one that Joe has. And you put these two characters together, and the movie is obviously not just about these characters' relationships with their parents, but kind of the resulting relationship that they have with each other. And you see that in frames later on. But in this couple of frames, I think it's great that you're talking about the color and how washed it is, and the storybook endings, the beginnings and the endings, and how they relate with one another. But I think these two frames, if you just look at how they're framed and how they're relating to one another, right? It's almost like there's a dialogue going on. If you were to shoot a dialogue in that wide shot, or even in the reverse shots, if you were to put those shots together, the characters are facing one another, right? That's the natural, obviously the natural dialogue framing is that, we're looking at each other. They're creating the illusion that we're looking at each other. And even though there's a barrier, if you were to put these two frames side by side, which I might do, we can immediately highlight that Joe's facing right to left, and his dad's the opposite, facing left to right. And he even has his hand extended out. I mean, obviously the way that this scene plays out is different than just looking at it as a still image, but we can do both and talk about it. It's a great little sequence, great little frames back to back. I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure they cut from that to this without having any sort of cut in the middle, like in terms of the editing. Like, I think they go from the shower to his dad.
Yes.
Yeah. So there
are some frames also, like before his dad knocks on the door, he's thinking about the girl that he's got a crush on. So
right.
That was actually one of my other options for frames. Is there's a shot of Joe's eyes, and he's just sort of daydreaming about this girl, and you see like a close-up of her eyes in the field, which is another like great sort of editing parallel, but also a visual parallel. The other two frames that we've got are basically like essentially the same as the beginning frames. We have Joe in the hospital bathroom, and he's looking at himself, and he's all dirty. He's got a bit of grungy facial hair growing, and his dad is knocking on the door, and he hands him some, like, some toothpaste, a toothbrush, some deodorant, whatever, and he's on the other side of the door waiting for him. And these two frames are definitely a lot more saturated. Not much, but you can see that it's like, maybe getting a little bit warmer, at least with the frame of the dad. He's just leaning against the door waiting for Joe to get out. And Joe's frame is also a bit more saturated, but it's a little colder. But I think it's pretty apparent that their relationship has changed since, now they've been reunited after Joe came back from literally living by himself in the woods.
For the summer.
For the summer. Maybe you'd call him a king of summer.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know. Is that kind of what they're implying?
Yeah.
Maybe.
But yeah, and I also wanted to mention, counter to your point, Cam, with cutting back and forth between the two is this movie uses a lot of like visual obstructions in the frame to kind of show the divide between the relationships of all the characters. So here, I mean, this is a pretty obvious one. There's a door in the way of both of them. And I know you even mentioned in the first frame of the dad, he's literally reaching his hand out. It's kind of almost a subconscious, like he's trying to reach out to his son, as cheesy as it sounds. But I mean, a lot of the stuff you see in movies is not by accident. It's really, a lot of it is thought of. And I think this is like a perfect example. There's literally a divide, a door, an obstruction between the relationship of Joe and his dad. Yeah,
and that's the nature of films is watching change, you know, and seamlessly, right? And how even though there is a storybook ending, you know, where or how movies start are generally kind of how they end. And this is a good example, and it's a subtle thing because it's not the same door, you know, obviously, right. But the visual style and like you're saying, even things as subtle as saturation and color choices and that sort of a thing, they change over time too, and you can see that here with these four frames, capturing two moments, and over the course of obviously the film, the characters have to go through something, and the filmmakers, including the director and DP, have to support that and do their work to show that change. And with things as subtle as saturation, you can do that. So I think these are four great frames. Did you want to focus on parallels, or is there something else you wanted to talk about as well, or is parallels we can make that sort of our discussion, or was there something else you wanted to bring up about the four frames? What did you have else in mind?
I mean, I know I kind of mentioned the color a little bit, but I think not only does it help convey the status of everyone's relationships, but it also just sort of adds to, I guess, the overall feeling of the movie. Like, you'll notice, like, when you watch the movie that it looks pretty grainy, almost like it was shot on film. Actually, it was shot on a Red Epic, I believe, and with some Panavision Primo lenses. But it was actually printed on 35 mil later on, which does, I'm not really sure what their process was, whether they, you know, printed it onto 35 mil and then rescanned it. I don't know what the case was, or whether they just sort of added some digital grain in there. But I think the intention behind it and sort of the color palette choice, like throughout the movie, it's very saturated. And along with the grain and sort of the warm tones, it really conveys sort of the like nostalgic feeling of this movie. They also tend to sometimes like go out of focus a little bit, and I noticed this because I'm a focus puller, or at least trying to be. But I don't know, I think it's a very like smart and sort of natural way to show maybe something that feels more like a memory. I think the warm sort of color palette throughout this movie is really outstanding. I love it.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting what you're talking about, what you're getting to with that aspect of it being a memory, you know. A lot of people's memories are associated with summer.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Like if you go back to, like, even if we just go back to 2013, where we were in 2013 when this movie came out, a lot of those memories, you know, are associated with summer. A lot of them are associated with travel. A lot of them are associated with friends, and a lot of them are associated with camp, and a lot of them are associated. That's where all my memories go. I mean, in terms of like in terms of school, your memory doesn't go to math class. You know, your memory goes to that time you were tripped by this guy and it didn't work out for him in the hallways
Right.
between math class and science, you know. So, and I think those memories in general, at least in filmmaking as a whole, not just Kings of Summer, but when memories are portrayed or flashbacks are portrayed, there's the sense of sometimes there's a sense of softness. Like sometimes they
Right,
just
right.
they choose to go out of focus a little bit and wander around the camera, the characters with the camera. And the moment with Kelly, I think was her name, if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
in the field, that's a little soft, isn't it? I think there's a little soft, maybe not in focus, but there's like a softness to it. There's a softness to her, you know?
Yeah, I have a feeling that they probably use, I don't know, maybe Robin can answer this a bit more, but maybe some sort of like pro mist filter or something that adds a bit of glow to them. But yeah, especially like in sort of the maybe daydreams, that's the word I'm looking for, is yeah, there's definitely a softness to it. Also, they're a bit more saturated as well than the rest of the movie. And yeah, definitely a lot of like, they're probably shooting at a very like shallow f-stop, so you get that nice like bokeh around the edges that you get with, you know, anamorphic lenses. But yeah.
Yeah, and that, you know, you could just sit down with a DP, even if you're shooting digital, and say, okay, film. That's what we're going for. What's your look? We're going for film.
Yeah.
Okay, are you going to give me film to shoot on? No.
No.
Nope.
I'd be too scared to do that.
I'd be too scared to do that.
Yeah.
You'd be too scared to shoot on film, or
Yeah.
you'd be too scared to be the producer hiring the person and giving them film.
No, to shoot it.
To shoot
probably.
it, yeah.
To shoot it, for sure.
But we were having this discussion before about, you know, like, was it shot on film? Trying to figure out afterwards, was it shot on film? And I did think it was throughout the film when I was seeing, especially with the close-ups, right? I mean, with the close-ups, it's easy to convince me with the close-ups that they're shooting on film, even if they're not, because of you can see the grain.
Yeah.
And it's hard to tell without sitting down and talking to the editor or the person who processed the footage, or even somebody involved in the post process. It's hard to figure out for yourself what their process exactly was, because they could have just printed the master on a film strip,
Right.
or they could have printed every shot on every shot and then edited from the film, like, I mean, or rescanned it. Like, they could have done anything.
Right. It's hard to know.
You know, could there have been some grain that came through when they printed the master on 35? And, you know, is there a big change that happens if they choose to show a printed master, like a traditionally printed 35 millimeter master in a cinema, versus if they brought a DCP? So what happens in those processes is kind of, you know, it's hard to tell just by being a viewer.
Right.
But there's no disputing that it suited the tone of this coming of age film, which, you know, there's no disputing that. I mean, it really looked like and felt like a coming of age film. I want to talk a little bit about Biagio's character, because I feel like we can't have a podcast episode about Kings of Summer unless we talk about Biagio.
He carried this movie.
Yeah, he did carry the movie, didn't he? What do you want to say about Biagio? Like, how do you, like, because it really, this film really is a trio film,
Yeah.
right? It really is. I mean, the first shot of the movie is Patrick and Joe and Biagio banging on I think it's a sewer pipe, I think.
Yeah, it looks like it, yeah.
Banging on a pipe, right? And it's really out there. Like, it's weird, like, but it's funny and it's cool, and it tells you what kind of a movie you're watching. Like, you know, if you walk into the cinema and you see this is the first frame, you're like, oh, okay. That's the movie we're gonna watch here. Okay.
Yeah, I think they're sort of a bit of an unlikely trio. They're all very different characters. Joe is very like driven, and he's sort of, you know, got a plan for everything, where I think that it sort of parallels his dad a lot more than probably he'd like to admit. And then we have Patrick. He's sort of the one that wasn't really sure about this idea in the first place. But he basically was like, literally anything I can do to get away from my parents because they're just so overbearing and they literally make me break out in hives. So, you know, he's just sort of the like, okay, I'm just gonna like go with the flow, but also kind of be a dick about it the whole time. And then we have Biagio, who just like is kind of a wrench in their plans almost. He just sort of starts tagging along, and he's definitely like the comedic relief in this movie. I mean, the whole movie like does have a levity to it, but he's got some of the funniest lines in this movie.
Oh, I know. You die laughing listening to some of the shit he says. And they do spend some time. I'm sorry to cut in, but they do spend some time, not a lot of time, but they do spend a scene showing Biagio's relationship with his father while he's shaving. So, I mean, you do. So Biagio is not just there to be funny and be silly and you know, and add that aspect to it, because by no means is it wasted on him. I mean, Biagio is a great character, and they don't break the trend of showing you the paternal relationships of Patrick and by ignoring Biagio's father. And they do mention his uncle and the Challenger and his history and his backstory a little bit too, so you get a sense of where Biagio's coming from. But man, some of the stuff he says is hilarious. And, you know, and like you said, they're different. They're all different characters. They're completely different characters, you know. And you summarized it perfectly by calling it an unlikely trio, because they really are an unlikely trio. And it also just secures and perpetuates the points that we've been making about how they all have different relationships with their paternal figures, and just there's something about showing dads shaving, you know, or like there's something about showing dads show their kids how to shave. I mean, it's for a boy, it's kind of like one of those things that you kind of, this is sort of a milestone. I'm 12, I'm going to learn how to shave from my dad, or at age 8, he's going to give me a fake razor, and, you know, like we've seen, but and the shaving and the beards, like how they grow, and I missed it at one point, but the beards show passage of time and all that kind of stuff. But they try and the filmmakers strike a really good balance of bringing in quote unquote masculine things, right? That boys are raised to be taught how to do or approach life in a certain way, with things that obviously they're carving their own path, literally, right? They're building a house and whatever. So the filmmakers, there's a lot of symbolism in what they're doing, and you know, to a degree we're all trying to just find our own way, and we're, obviously being shoehorned into a certain expectation it does exactly that. It shoehorns you and kind of constricts you, and these boys we're living vicariously through them and figuring our own selves out. Did you have some kind of a journey like that? Did you relate to any one of the three characters, and it could have been Biagio, you know, more than the rest, or even if it was Kelly, that's okay too. But were there any one character that you thought you related to most?
In a way, sort of. I actually want to go off of a couple things that you just mentioned. And it does sort of add on to my point about the parallels, but I think that Joe's journey throughout this is really like very similar to what his dad is going through. And I think like as kids, not even just them as characters, but everyone, a lot of people want to sort of do things opposite of what their parents do. And I think that that's probably the most relatable part of this movie is you grow up and your parents raise you a certain way. They have certain rules. They, you know, go about things in, their own ways. And, there's a lot of things that we go through growing up that maybe we're like, man, when I'm a parent, I'm going to do the exact opposite of what they're doing.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think Joe's journey throughout this, it's showing that really he is a lot more similar to his dad than he realizes. And I know I mentioned that before already, but his sort of relationship with Kelly is he, has a crush on her, but turns out she likes Patrick, and they start dating. And that's pretty similar to what Joe's dad is going through with this new girl. And, he liked this woman, and turns out they didn't work out. And that's very similar to what Joe just went through. And they sort of let a woman come in between their other relationships. But yeah, no. So I think I wouldn't say I necessarily relate to one character over the other. I think if anything, it would probably be Joe, just because he goes through that, man, I want to be totally opposite of my dad. And I think that's pretty relatable, really, for anyone. And, I think Joe is very similar to me in the sense of that as soon as I get an idea, I'm just like, okay, let's do this right now. I don't really want to have a plan, which is so funny, because I'm sure if I literally ask you or anyone else, they're like, Karina needs to have everything planned to the T, and if things aren't on time, then she gets mad and frustrated.
Accurate.
But I like to...
Run Boy Run 2019.
I made that film happen, Cam, all right?
I mean, it looks great, so...
Yeah. No, but I mean, I think at least, maybe how I was when I first watched the film is, I just I definitely felt that same wanderlust that he did, to just sort of get out of, his parents' house and just go do his own thing. And now I'm here and also doing my own thing. So
yeah, and that's great. I think I had a little bit of a different experience. I mean, this, running away from home, the feeling of running away from home, I think everybody has at some point. But the actually executing it for an entire summer, nobody ever does. I mean, some people might, I guess, but they're exaggerating this feeling, which I think is a great thing, which film does a lot. But and I've thought about running away from home, but it's just it's one of those fleeting things. I didn't have a bad relationship with my parents, and not that this relationship, whatever. Anyways, in terms of my parents, I think that my parents did a really great job of really trying not to be too overbearing and letting me do kind of what I wanted to do in my life, and even them to this day reflect on how they know people their age who have kids our age and how they had a big, not my parents, but the other parents they're referencing had a big handle in, you got to go to school here and you got to do this, and that overbearing nature. And I think I relate to. I think it's hard. You take little bits and pieces from sort of each one of the characters, because I think in terms of that planning, we got to have if we're going to do this, we got to have a script. We got to have a plan. We got to have a schedule. We got to have a Pirates of the Caribbean, map. We have to have our map, right? And in my life, that relates mostly to filming, production, and hopefully we'll get to do more of that, and framework, But I would say that there are certain aspects of Patrick that I think I relate to, and Joe and Patrick's relationship, something had to come in the middle between them. And I mean, in this case, it just happened to be Kelly. But until that point, right, even though Patrick was a bit of kind of a, I don't know if we should do this, like not as, a bit more hesitant, which I think is more ingrained in me. Like if we're jumping off a cliff, I'm standing back and be like, I don't know, even if we have a parachute and we're with an instructor and everything, I'm like, I don't know if we should do this, like that's more me. I still have, even though I am, let's have a plan and, kind of gung-ho and let's go do it. There's still a sense of, you got to know what you're doing. So I'm half Patrick. I am that, okay, guys, I don't know if this is the best idea, but it's sort of like devil angel on your shoulder. Like, right. I don't know if this is a great idea, but let's fucking do it.
Yeah.
Let's go break these woods and build a treehouse out of things that we can find, which I think is totally cool. And I think that sense of resourcefulness that these kids show, the filmmakers show, and how they approach making the film. So that's kind of neat. I'm looking at Robin every so often, and he's like just staring at my 6D to make sure it's recording, which I appreciate because last time we tried to do this, it didn't work. Is it okay?
We're getting a low battery warning.
Oh, did I ask you to talk?
You did ask me a question.
Maybe we'll wrap it up then.
Yeah, we could start wrapping it up. I think there's a lot of good stuff in the episode, and not having an episode that's too long is also a positive thing. Because before we do wrap it up, I have to do my standard spiel of Framework is a film-centric podcast brought to you by Red Curtain Entertainment. We're lucky to live in Ontario, where stage 3 of the reopening is here. So it's great. I'm really excited to be doing this show. And Kevin, is doing us the favor of putting it on Red Curtain Entertainment Podcast, which is on YouTube. The show is also available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you're interested in film and you want to hear more about pop culture and movies in pop culture, and you have an idea for an episode, drop it in the comments. You can also send us an email or whatever. I mean, I got a couple messages on my Instagram, so you can find me on Instagram. You can send me a message there. We'd love to take your ideas and totally just not run with them. So let us know.
Send your ideas, but we won't use them.
Yeah, send your ideas. Feel free to send them. I mean, you got choices.
Might not even read them.
We might not even read them. So, no, we will. Maybe. Probably not. So, yeah, Kings of Summer. It's a great film. If you made it this far and you still haven't watched it, I'm sorry that we spoiled the film, but go ahead and watch it anyways. It's available, I believe, on Amazon Prime in the United States. You can also rent it on Google Play, I think, or Google Movies or whatever.
You can rent it on Google Play.
Yeah, go check it out on Google Play and let us know what you think. I enjoyed chatting with you, Karina.
Can't say the same to you, Cam. Just kidding, but not really.
That's good. Before I just do my wrap-up spiel, finish the wrap-up spiel, we're doing something in about 2 hours that's actually really exciting. Actually, less than... I know. We're going to go see a movie for the first time in 16 months. Theaters were open for like a little bit of last year, but then they closed them. But I didn't go out and see anything when it happened. So about 16 months now, and Robin and I joked that we're going to go see Quiet Place and you're going to go see In the Heights, but you don't like musicals.
Can't just throw me under the bus like that, Cam.
3 tickets, and the movies are on the tickets.
Well...
So unless you're going to steal Robin's Quiet Place ticket, we're not going to bring you into the Quiet Place theater. I mean, maybe we could. We just got to sneak you in, but I don't know. Maybe we won't do that. Before we actually hit the record button to stop this episode, I also want to thank Robin for setting up this little setup and Karina for lending us your studio and hanging out here. Because, I think we've done 4 episodes and we had 4 different locations of recording.
Keeping it interesting.
So Framework is traveling. Framework is changing with every episode. This episode, we talked about a little bit of everything. We talked about change. We talked about transition. We talked about characters, storybook endings. We talked about saturation and color and how they can influence the progression of your movies. And we hope that the listeners learned something and got something out of it. And if you didn't, well, then maybe try again in episode 5. Yeah, find us on YouTube, RC Podcasts, and also our website, www.redcurtainentertainment.com/framework. See ya.
Bye-bye.
And cut.
Cut.